Hello from me, and thank you for being with us. Thank you for joining our channel. We are welcoming two new guests who will talk on today's topic.
With us in the studio is Goran Mijalovski, the head advisor from L3RN on behavioral training, consulting, and later via direct call will be joining Nicole Smart, who is an international corporate trainer. Can you please explain how can emotional intelligence be used in the workplace to support the customer-centric approach?
Brilliant question. So let's take a look at what emotional intelligence is, or emotional quotient, as per Dr. Daniel Goleman. So you're looking at the 4 quadrants, and that's self-awareness, self-management, social awareness, and relationship management. Now, these 4 quadrants work independently, but they also work concurrently. So as we as individuals are evolving, becoming aware of our behavior, our thought patterns, our reactions, how it's impacting our team members, becoming socially aware is critically important to start to understand the people we're working with. So within the nucleus of our workspace, the internal customer, being the employees, being us, right? Very important for us to have a purpose, team cohesiveness, a sense of belonging, a sense of the why factor, what is driving an employee's engagement. And as Goran said, customer centricity is all about every member of the organization is passionate or committed to their job function or their core unit. And that has a direct and indirect impact on the actual customer itself. So the outcome of the sale or the outcome of the service or whatever the case might be. So that customer centricity is at a primary level built in our emotional framework. And I just want to touch on EQ, or emotional intelligence. Many people often confuse it with crazy feelings, emotions. Not at all. Emotional intelligence is about leadership, essentially. It's about the sense of self-leadership. So every person in an organization, regardless of title or authority, is a leader, right? Yeah. We're driving our thoughts, our actions, our motivation, our engagement, our decisions. If we're in a conflict situation in the workplace environment, how do we choose to react? How do we choose to overcome that or avoid that? Are we self-aware of our body language, the way we're communicating effectively? And Goran also spoke of perception. Are we perceiving a situation to be accurate? Are we being perceived accurately? So all of these come into play to make up what we call emotional elasticity, our ability to expand, adapt, and evolve our emotional and psychological, if you like, framework. And that's the favorite word now in the workplace environment, is agility. So it heavily impacts the people-centric approach and obviously the customer experience at the end of the day.
Great elaboration. Thank you, Nicole.
Nicole, with your extensive experience and detailed understanding of the corporate arena, have you ever witnessed companies failing or struggling to maintain good customer relations, even though they hire technically prepared employees and leaders with high IQ?
Good question. And the answer is unfortunately yes. We see this all the time because depending on the industry, which makes a big difference in the answer. However, regardless of whether it's a technical industry or not, at the end of the day, as long as we're dealing with another human being, we're dealing with energy in motion, emotion. And so we can be technically proficient, which is a tick and a necessity. But how are we engaging the people in our environment? How are we communicating effectively? What does communication mean? And so on and so forth. So emotional intelligence plays a huge role in the overall experience of the organization and in the ever-changing environment. And so as an executive coach and a corporate trainer, we work with organizations to really stimulate the team cohesiveness, because that's where all the action happens, regardless of, like I say, the technical proficiency. And as Dr. Goleman often, he in fact said that, quote unquote, that essentially we can be all equal on paper. So let's take a look at a resume. We've got high grades, we've gone through university, we are now degreed in a technical field, for example. Now we're all entering the workplace. So essentially, we equal on paper, but what's going to be the distinguishing factor to make an employee a leader, navigate up the corporate ladder, think laterally, become a problem solver, a decision maker, creative thinker, know when to speak, know when not to speak, how to engage our clientele or our stakeholders, how to respond in a crisis situation, how to respond in an internal crisis situation, and that all comes back down to emotional intelligence.
But seeing the current situation objectively, would you say that employees nowadays give advantage to IQ or EQ when welcoming new hires? And how does that impact business in general?
Well, again, depending on the environment and obviously the job spec, but we see it more and more often that employers are looking for employees who are adaptable, who are agile, who can respond in different situations. I mean, let's be honest, when we called into organizations, we are essentially, well, I am in my scope, I'm training or facilitating or coaching or up-leveling critical business skills, hashtag otherwise known as soft skills, because these are the interpersonal skills, the interpersonal ability. And as our competitors or the company's competitors are evolving and growing, we need a core employee unit that is able to be attuned to the macro environment, be able to articulate that internally. I'll give an example. Let's say, for example, there is a conflict happening within a team. Mm-hmm. That conflict is consuming the team's energy. Therefore, the team have a very limited surplus energy to actually, put into a customer-centric approach because they're sapped from a toxic work environment or toxic work culture. These things don't only impact just the employee motivation and engagement, they directly impact employee performance and therefore ultimately not leading to achieving to the vision, mission, and core values of the organization, which in turn, of course, affects the end result being our customer. So we're seeing a drive for more and more, to answer your question, emotionally intelligent employees, so to speak.
Many companies in the past felt that they had to constantly monitor their employees to ensure client satisfaction. Do you think that the fact that many companies had to switch to remote work increased awareness of the importance on raising employee EQ?
Without fail, 100% yes. In the last 2 years since the pandemic broke, the amount of programs that I've been hosting with EQ, emotional intelligence, as the spine, as the backbone to all the programs is astonishing. And why? Because let's be honest, there's many factors that impacted this concept. Many teams, well, most teams were in their silos. They had a functionality, there was continuity, consistency, they knew what to expect when they came to work. In many respects, and I'm not speaking on behalf of everyone and all, but in my experience, people that I've engaged with in organizations, they were comfortable. There was a plateau. It was great. So when the crisis happened, a couple of things happened. The managers actually had to demonstrate leadership, right? So let's think about that. They're managers, some were effective managers, some are not necessarily effective managers. However, not all managers are leaders or demonstrate those competencies. So the crisis actually brought about a brilliant opportunity for managers to actually lead and rise to the occasion. But that required the manager leader to actually start to evolve, grow, and expand their elasticity and their ability to respond to change and crisis and start to really understand their employees better, really get into their mindset, really create a sense of awareness on what's driving the employees' engagement, fear, and so forth, given that they weren't in the same environment as well at the same time. Equivalently, the whole ethos was to get up, dress up, and deliver. And that was sort of the primary mission of employees to get up, dress up, and deliver from home and to create a team intercontinentally or a virtual team. And that required an enormous amount of emotional intelligence competencies That's motivation, engagement, purpose, overcoming fear, the ability to express our emotions. Are we prepared to share with our team that we're confused, feeling detached? And in many respects, many team members did not know how to articulate that. So it required our team members to actually start to read into that. Why is this team member pulling away? Is it because of virtual? Are they fearful? Are they disengaged? And on the other side of the coin, I saw, and just to add to the question, I've seen many success stories of employees who were quite stuck in a stagnant environment actually rise and become far more engaged and far more participative in the virtual space. And so, yes, emotional intelligence plays a massive role. Big factor of all of this was crisis, responding to crisis, and change management. Many people and executives that I've worked with globally fell into a quasi or a depression, or a state of depression, and feeling disengaged. And therein, just in that aspect, an enormous amount of internal self-reflection and had to be, taken into account. And that was happening concurrently. So in conclusion to the question, I like to think of this as the raising the wisdom of the collective. And then we have something what we call teamship intelligence. And that's when the team is starting to raise their intelligence collectively.
We definitely learned a lot from this episode with very important topics for us and also for our viewers. For that, Goran and Nicole, thank you very much for all the information that you shared, and thanks for being part of this show. It was a real pleasure to have you. Until next time, stay tuned.